Time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
Who?
It's a story for a different time.
I want out!
Just get him talking. We can move in before he tries anything.
Is anyone working with Tommy?
No, he's a lone wolf now.
Now the final chapter in Chicago is about to commence, the final battle, the final moments for most of these characters, and the trailer in my opinion is just scratching the surface. It does look absolutely insane. I have to start by mentioning, normally I am quite skeptical when it comes to these sorts of trailers, because of what we've seen before. The trailer looks insane, and then once the season gets going, there are a few disappointing elements, but I genuinely haven't got the feeling with this one. From the action, Tommy cancelling Christmas, law enforcement's involvement, the discourse between the CBI, especially with Jenard, fractured alliances, new alliances and coalitions, and we are going to be seeing Tommy making some new friends. Although as one of Tommy's former mentors mentioned, there are no friends in the streets, and that's another element of the trailer which I really liked, which was different, the mention of Kanan and Ghost. We're definitely going to get into that in a bit more detail in just a moment, but overall you get the sense that this is going to be a great season ahead and one hell of a finish, and a fitting end to Tommy's chapter in Chicago, which probably won't end in total victory if I'm going to be totally honest. The writing really does look like it's on the wall for one particular character, JP, especially with this particular funeral. So there definitely is a lot to unpack. There's a lot to dig into over not just this particular breakdown, but over the coming weeks in the build up to the grand finale of Fall Season 3. But let's start with where the trailer started, which is Tommy mentoring D-Mac and mentioning two characters who had a huge influence on his life.
It's time for you to be baptized into this life. Just like Kanan did for me and Ghost.
Who?
It's a story for a different time.
So it's time for D-Mac to be baptized into this life, just like Kanan did for Tommy and Ghost. And just before we run through Tommy bringing D-Mac into the game with him, let's take a short history lesson for those who may have forgotten.
Back then, Kanan kept us in line. Taught us the business, made us men. Ghost and I owe your father big.
I get it. Felt the same way. Your pops brought me in the game, schooled me on everything. Make sure your word is your bond.
So those are two examples from Back in Power Season 1, where we hear both mentioning how Kanan baptized them in the streets. There are other conversations and mentions of what Kanan did for them as well, such as the chop shop, Ghost learning how to hustle, and taking the laundromat idea kind of, which is something he would have learned from Kanan. But enough of the history lesson. It really is great to hear Tommy mentioning both Kanan and Ghost in a conversation with D-Mac. In previous seasons, he did mention Ghost, but Kanan also played a huge role in his life before we met them in Power. And it really is great to hear Tommy now passing this down to D-Mac. It's actually great to hear Kanan's name for once. Now D-Mac's reaction is one where he's thinking, who are Kanan and Ghost? Tommy made reference to knowing a kid like D-Mac back in Season 1, and he was actually referring to Ghost at the time, but he never mentioned the name. But it is a story for a different time according to Tommy, and I really do hope they circle back around to this. We're definitely going to see Tommy showing all the traits, all the skills, all the maneuvers that he learned from Kanan and also Ghost. But at some point later on in Season 3, or maybe even in Power Legacy, I really do hope D-Mac turns around and questions Tommy and asks him, yo, Uncle T, who are Kanan and Ghost? For those who have also watched my previous breakdowns, I mentioned hallucination scenes, and I spoke specifically about Tommy seeing Kanan. And with this mention, honestly, it genuinely is something to keep in mind. But Tommy's going to be showing D-Mac the ropes. Tommy seems like he's completely scrapped the idea of keeping D-Mac on the straight and narrow, because I do think he's probably now realized this kid is going to be in the streets with or without me. So the best thing I can do in my particular position is teach him what Kanan taught me, teach him what he learned from Ghost, hopefully help him not make the same mistakes he did when he was a kid or some of the mistakes that he made back in Power. But a complete flip in Tommy's mentality when it comes to D-Mac. He's now going to be in the game with his uncle Tommy. We've heard him mention Kanan and Ghost. Let's see if it is a story for a different time, and let's see what D-Mac's made of in the streets. But moving over to Shanti warning Tommy he needs to watch his back.
You need to watch your back.
Now we know Tommy has a lot of enemies in Chicago. In fact, one of them is sitting right in front of him in this particular trailer. Shanti is definitely one of them. She's telling Tommy that he needs to watch his back, but she's also someone who's been plotting and scheming from back in Season 2. I don't think Tommy is stupid enough to trust Shanti all the way, but he does need to be very careful because Shanti really is a crafty character. She's a strategic boxer. The The way we saw her making moves back in season 2 was very boxer-like. Keep jabbing, be patient. When there's an opening, that's when she's going to wait to land the knockout blow. And I do think that's going to be majority of her game plan in season 3 as well. She's going to be watching all this chaos unfold between the CBI, the Marquez Cartel, Tommy and also the Insane Princes. And in my opinion, she's probably going to stay far away or create an alliance with the one person she believes is going to actually win. Can alliances change, and could Shanti genuinely team up with Tommy? Because we do see fractures within the CBI. I mean, it is possible because, again, I do think she's probably going to try and pick the eventual winner. She's only going to be looking out for herself. Now, Shanti isn't his only problem. He also needs to watch his back around the CBI, Vic Flynn, and also Miguel Garcia. But there's also law enforcement. So first up, law enforcement tied with Vic Flynn.
There's a goddamn street war between the Marquez Cartel and CBI.
¿Qué pasa, muchachos? I want out!
Just get him talking. We can move in before he tries anything.
Is anyone working with Tommy?
No, he's a lone wolf now.
Now with Stacey Marks, she really does remind me of Blanca Rodriguez, Jenny Sullivan, and also Cooper Sacks. She's obsessed with catching one man. And in the trailer we hear Jenard also mentioning there's a lot of bodies dropping because of Tommy Egan. And when a lot of bodies drop, that also attracts law enforcement. From one of the previous teasers, we also saw Bobby DeFranco uncovering a body, which looks kind of personal based on his reaction, but there is also a war brewing between the Marquez Cartel and the CBI in season 3 according to Stacey Marks. We know Tommy's going to be in a huge battle with Miguel Garcia in the early stages of season 3, and that really isn't going to go down well with Shay and also the Marquez Cartel. There's also going to be a lot of battles, not just in terms of bullets, but strategic moves made on both sides. But again, this is going to draw the attention of law enforcement. Bullets, guns, violence, noise, and death is just going to draw a lot of attention from Stacey Marks and the FBI. So we're going to see them busting into a house or an apartment. They're going to be making their moves and trying to make Tommy's life as very difficult as possible. And that also includes using Vic Flynn. At the end of season 2, he was caught by Tommy. He knows that Vic is a snitch. But Tommy's game plan is to use him and get information from law enforcement. Towards the end of Power, they had the insider knowledge of Angela Valdez. And sometimes to stay one step ahead of law enforcement, you need to know what law enforcement are thinking. You need to know what moves they're going to make before they make them. But Vic also wants out. He knows the position that he's in only ends with one outcome. Being a snitch in the world of Power, I mean, we know how it ends. Especially when it comes to Tommy. But Stacey Marks is pushing, and she really is going to push Vic Flynn right to the edge. It looks like her and the FBI have got Tommy under surveillance. She's telling Vic, get him to talk, and if he does try anything, they'll move in. Now we know Tommy isn't stupid. Back in season 2, he put up CCTV all around his property, and he was also checking for bugs, because Stacey Marks did bug his place through Vic Flynn. That's why he's probably telling Mireya just keep hush while he's on the phone, or not to say anything that will probably incriminate them. But which direction does Vic lead law enforcement? That's the big question. I say this because he's going to be under pressure from both sides. Gary Lennon even teased in a recent interview, there are many ways to evade what he thinks is his destiny. There are many options, and I do think you all as the audience members will be very surprised with the option that we choose in order to tell his story. So Vic, in my opinion, is a huge wildcard. He's going to be under pressure from Stacey Marks, no doubt, but I don't think his story is going to be as straightforward. In my personal opinion, I think he's going to play law enforcement and eventually help Tommy escape. And season 3 will leave Stacey Marks with either egg on her face, her being suspended, or the worst outcome, potentially even with her death. But moving on to the CBI, Diamond, Tommy, and also all the action. Now in the trailer we've got Jenard telling Diamond, Tommy's gonna blow all this up, with Diamond's response being Tommy is his partner. So we've got Tommy and Diamond in action blowing up a warehouse in flames. It seems like they're making some strategic moves of their own. We know their partnership that they've developed since the beginning of season 1, but it is also a partnership that has also showed signs of cracks. With Jenard, he is doubling down on Tommy needing to go from the CBI, because he's the reason why there's a lot of people being shot, and he's probably not wrong. The Tommy Egan that we know from Power, he was never afraid to get into fights, he was never afraid to cancel Christmas, and also take it to anybody in the streets. So he probably is the reason why a lot of people are getting shot on both sides. The CBI have probably lost soldiers, the Marquez Cartel have probably lost people, and so will Miguel Garcia's crew, the Insane Princes. There is a lot of gunfire in action throughout the trailer. Tommy storming into someone's apartment with what looks like to be a new alliance. there's masked men in a bar, which is something we saw back in the first teaser. Tommy's throwing someone off a roof. A drive-by from a few guys that actually kind of look coked out of their faces. The drive-by looks all over the place, if I'm going to be totally honest. Their shooting looks all over the place. So whoever these guys are, whoever they're shooting at, whether it's Tommy, the CBI, the Insane Princes, these guys are probably going to get dropped. They actually kind of give me the vibes of the Yardies that we saw back in season 1. They look erratic and quite drugged up. But there are going to be a lot of bodies that drop. And Jenard probably isn't wrong. Tommy may even be the cause of it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tommy is kicked out of the CBI in the first half of season 3, because you know Jenard is going to be plotting against Tommy. You know Shanti is. We know Jenard's been against Tommy from day 1. And again, he's looking at the gun probably thinking, Tommy's got to go. And I also think we've probably got the hint from Vic Flynn.
Is anyone working with Tommy?
No, he's a lone wolf now.
Tommy is now said to be a lone wolf. So let's talk about Tommy making his moves.
I'm like the Santa Claus of powder.
Now, I mentioned alliances earlier on in the breakdown because the way in which season 3 starts in terms of relationships, alliances, and coalitions, it's not going to be how season 3 ends. In fact, the table will probably begin to turn around the halfway mark. Alliances will shift, and we've probably already got a hint of it with Tommy being a lone wolf. Him coming into the lion's den of another crew. We've got him entering someone else's restaurant to maybe make a new alliance or another move. So we are going to be introduced to a few new players who may or may not be creating an alliance with Tommy. We've also got Tommy mentioning that he's like Santa Claus with white powder. Now you can't see who he's actually in conversation with, but it is a lady with short hair. And the only person I can think of that matches description from season 2 is Elise, Claudia's girlfriend. You also have to assume at some point Elise will come to ask the question around what happened to Claudia. Again, that is something I think will be cleared up in episode 1, but let's wait and see if they've got any kind of surprises up their sleeve when it comes to Claudia Flynn. But if this is Elise, if she does come around, does Tommy have a proposition for her? Again, it is difficult to see who he's speaking to, so I don't want to say this is Elise for sure, but based on season 2 with her short blonde hair, this could actually potentially be Elise. Now on the CBI front, we've got them at a warehouse, and this is the scene that we've seen before. We saw someone coming in on a bike unleashing hella gunfire. Now I actually think this is probably just someone who works for the CBI, because based on what else we saw in the trailer with the CBI walking out the warehouse with a couple of duffel bags, there are also bodies in the background. Diamond taking a kill shot in the same green outfit. Everything kind of just fits together, and it does seem like CBI have made a power move of their own on a rival crew in a warehouse. Just completely wipe them out with whoever's on this bike, and then they leave. Interestingly, Tommy is nowhere to be seen here, so whether he's been ousted by the CBI by this point probably is likely, because in the trailer it's already been teased Jenard doesn't want Tommy anywhere near the CBI. We've also learned that Tommy is now a lone wolf, but also probably creating alliances with other crews. The CBI are also against the Marquez Cartel, but the CBI do also look like they are going to be turning on each other as well. And this is what I'm talking about. Throughout the season, alliances will shift because there are going to be a lot of conflicts. There's going to be Jenard's way of running things, and then there's going to be Diamond's way of running things. So even if Tommy is kicked out of the CBI, I'm still expecting there to be huge cracks. Maybe because there's a huge death. One of their soldiers could potentially die, and then there's blame being thrown out. Maybe one person wants revenge, but maybe Diamond's saying, now's not the right time. This violence and death that we're going to see in season 3, it is going to cause huge cracks within the CBI. And it may also shift alliances and just throw a spanner in the works for Jenard and Diamond. Now this brings me on to the battle between Tommy and Miguel Garcia. We know there's no love lost between these two. We've got Miguel telling Tommy he's going to skin him alive. But will this be as straightforward as it seems? If the CBI are going against the Marquez Cartel, if Tommy's a lone wolf that's been ousted from the CBI, then Tommy's going to do whatever's best for him. And if it means teaming up with an enemy for a brief period, then so be it. We've seen enemies working together before in Power, it can definitely happen again. That's only if there is a mutual understanding and if there's something to gain for both ends. At the end of the day, it all comes down to power, money, control, and in Chicago, territory. We know Tommy's going to find Mireya. That's something Gary Lennon said will be resolved quite quickly. But with Tommy being a lone wolf, with them already teasing shifting alliances, I'm just wondering whether Tommy actually puts aside his differences with Miguel for the greater good. Because from a previous teaser, Miguel is in the background shooting alongside Tommy, not against him. So this image right here, we do have to keep it in mind. This season may start with Miguel versus Tommy, they may make moves against each other at the beginning of season 3, But when tragedy strikes, because it definitely will, and I'm going to come back around to that in just a moment with JP, it's going to change alliances and the landscape of the chessboard. It really is. But let's move on from Miguel Garcia and talk about Mireya Garcia.
Burn that motherfucking coalition to the ground before I let them take it from me.
Don't burn it down. Take it back.
Now we all know Mireya is going to be back in the fold. Miguel taking Mireya is going to be resolved quite quickly, and she's going to be telling Tommy, don't burn down that coalition, take it back. Again, it goes back to the point around how alliances will shift. There is going to be a new coalition that does form, but with Mireya, she's here pushing Tommy Egan to not burn it down but take it back, which is probably why we do see Tommy potentially creating new alliances, Miguel Garcia being one of them. We know he can work as a lone wolf, but in Chicago, how do you take on crews like the CBI and the Marquez Cartel without numbers? He is going to need numbers and he is going to need soldiers. But we've also got Mireya telling him that she knows what life she's in, she knows what she's signing up for, and she's going to wait for him. But the big question is, will it be third time the charm for Tommy after what happened with Holly and Lakeisha back in power? Will Mireya survive? Both Gary Lennon and Joseph Sikora have teased a proper love story between the two, so I am hoping they kind of go down a different route, but we're just going to have to park the survival question for Mireya. Let's wait and see. Now, talking about survival, let's talk about a character who I don't think is actually going to survive, and I do think they've given us a huge clue and a hint in this trailer, and that person is JP. Now, in the trailer we've got Kate Egan crying and holding on to Tommy, which is a very rare sight when you consider their relationship going back to Power. Power Origins will also dive even deeper into this complex relationship. You also add all the scenes together around Tommy's family with JP telling D-Mac that he'll always be there for him, them sharing a warm embrace, Kate Egan crying and then telling Tommy, make them suffer. Add that onto the funeral scene, in my opinion, I think they're just building up to JP's death. Have D-Mac and JP rebuild their relationship, have Kate and JP rebuild their relationship, as well as with Tommy, only to rip it away in the most tragic of ways. I mean, it really is typical Power. So we've got a funeral, we've got Tommy, Mireya, D-Mac, and sitting next to D-Mac, is that potentially D-Mac's mother? Again, if that is D-Mac's mom's, then it only adds even more to the theory of JP's death. So we are going to see a funeral, and based on everything else that we've seen in and around Tommy's family, it really is hard not to think that JP is going to be out of here in season 3. Now, the reason why I titled this section The Bloody Funeral is because watching on while this funeral seems to be taking place is Jenard and a few members of the CBI. Are they going to be unleashing hell when Tommy and these guys walk out the church? Which, by the way, the architecture really is something else. I saw something similar when I went to Madrid, and that's something that I think will be in season 3. A lot of Chicago's culture, famous buildings, famous graffiti, and a lot of other things. I do think that's what they did really well back in season 2. But we've also got the CBI waiting to pounce after the funeral. And if this does turn out to be a bloody funeral, we're going to see Tommy unleash absolute hell like we've never seen before. And that may even be the catalyst to kind of bring him and Miguel Garcia together. Who knows? Tommy's lost a lot of loved ones back in Power. If you betray him or go against his family, just have a look at what happened to Holly when she decided to put out the hit on Ghost through the Jamaicans. Tommy's just about managed to get his family together in Chicago. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and no doubt there's probably going to be more in season 3. But if he loses anybody else in a potential red funeral, then we are going to see a side to Tommy that we've never seen before. He's going to go on a full rampage, and I'd probably say I really wouldn't be surprised if Tommy breaks his kill count for most kills in a season for season 3. I am calling it now. I do think he's going to break his record, because he is saying it is going to be a battle of their lifetime, and now you guys can understand why. Now, this trailer doesn't have anything in terms of Tariq crossing over. If there is a crossover of law enforcement, Blanca Rodriguez, Jenny Sullivan, Agent Medina, or anybody else, they haven't given us any kind of clues. But Gary Lennon has teased that we will be seeing familiar faces. At this moment in time, they're not giving anything away. But I thought that is probably the best way to kind of wrap things up. With what we've seen in the trailer, I think it's only scratching the surface of how great season 3 is actually going to be. And there are going to be a lot of twists, surprises, and return of characters that we do need to keep in mind, which probably will transition us nicely over to Power Legacy. But over the next few weeks, we can kind of get into a lot more of these topics now that they've given us quite a bit to dig into. But that's where I'm going to wrap things up for this one. As always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.